What is up, A-Souls? Welcome back to another video talking about the new cards from the Harvest of Sorrow expansion. Nilfgaard is up today, and they're looking quite spicy. And I think we're just going to get right into it with Vilgefortz Renegade. A human mage agent, 6 power, 13 provisions, but not a Reens situation here, ladies and gentlemen. Deploy. Swap a card from your opponent's graveyard with a card in your hand. This is spicy. This is spicy. And this is another one of those cards where I've seen people say it's super toxic and overpowered. And I've seen people say that it's heavily overcosted and weak. And once again, like I said with Filavandrel in the last one, I can't really tell which side I am on, which means that no matter what happens, I won't blame the devs for not realizing sooner. If this is overpowered, I am not going to be mad at the developers for putting this in the game, because like, I'm looking at this and I can't really say if it's going to be overpowered. It's just, it's cool. But as with Filavandrel, if I had to guess, overpowered or underpowered, I'm going to say underpowered. And here's why. You're playing a 6 for 13, right? That's bad. But of course, you are ideally putting a 4, maybe 5 provision card from your hand into your opponent's graveyard and, you know, swapping it for a pretty good card. You can easily do this round 1 and just steal their Oniromancy. That's something you can do. Or you can do it later and you can take a legendary. Just take whatever good card they have, right? But the thing is, You're playing a 6-point card. And then even if you're putting a 4 provision card in the opponent's graveyard, that would have still been worth like, 6 points for you, right? So in order for this to even break even, the card you swap it for has to be worth 7 more points than the 6. Like, you have to upgrade it by 7 or more points. You know? I'm sorry, I'm really burpy. That's why I'm taking pauses here. Like 7 or more points. And now we're talking, okay, it needs to be worth like 13 points. Like the way Vilgefortz is statted, he gives you 6 points. Like, people like to talk about Elder Bears and Nilfgaard. This is literally an Elder Bear. It's a 6 base power unit that does nothing more on the board. It's an Elder Bear. And then you can take an actual Elder Bear from your hand and swap it for a, 13 provision card maybe, if you're lucky. And there you have it. Did you really accomplish anything if you do that? If you take a 13 provision card, which, as usually, if you do that, it's just going to be Oniromancy, which really just translates into a little bit of thinning, a little bit of extra consistency for you, but you're still just playing your own cards. Even if you get a 13 provision card, did you really gain anything? And if you're using this to disrupt your opponent by actually removing something they need from their graveyard, then you're usually getting less points, but more disruption. Like, sure, maybe there's stuff that I'm not seeing. Obviously, one thing that you can do with this, you can take Viper from your hand into the opponent's graveyard. And if he banishes all the cards and comes back, then you played a 13-point card. And you know, you don't need to get as good of a card to make this worth it. The thing about Viper, like, again, if you do this round 1, your opponent opens with a Neuromancy, and you just swap your Viper for a Neuromancy, like, yeah, you'll get Viper out. It's really good. It's really good. But if your opponent doesn't play a Neuromancy, and their graveyard gets filled with a bunch of other stuff, and then later on you want to use Vilgefortz to get a good card from their graveyard, what if you don't get the Viper out? See, that's the thing. What if you don't get the Viper out? Like, then you just put an 8 provision card in your opponent's graveyard and trade it up for something else. So that it's nice to see a card that supports Viper. I mean, that's cool. And there will be times where you use this with Viper, you get something pretty good, you get the Viper out, and you can feel pretty damn good about yourself. But this one is really hard to try to imagine what it could be worth. It's I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this is one of those cards where if you play the card that you swapped for in the same round that you played Vilgefortz, then you're overall not really gaining anything a lot of the time. But if you're able to play Vilgefortz in an earlier round and just swap one of your 5 provision cards that are part of your game plan anyway, or they're not part of your game plan, but like they are one of your target cards, like, you know, a Gwent match is 16 turns usually, and you know, you have 16 cards in your deck that ideally you want to play, and then there are cards that help you play them. There are 4 provision cards that help you afford them and don't cost you any extra provisions by themselves. If you can swap out one of your weaker target cards for something really good, and then, you know, you make it to the next round and then you can play it, then, you know, it's kind of carryover. It's a form of carryover. If you have to play it in the same round, then you have to trade up really, really strongly for this to even be worth it. Am I wrong? I could be missing something here. But like playing a 6 for 13 that does nothing else on the board, and you have to get so much extra value from the card you swap for. This is why, if I had to guess, overpowered or underpowered, I'm going to say underpowered. I think this card may actually end up being underpowered. And, you know, when they're talking about, like, toxic, like, yes, if this steals a Melusine that has been strengthened to, like, 30 points, yes, of course. That's going to be insane. But that Melusine would have returned for 8 provisions anyway, so one player is going to do something insane with that Melusine. I don't really care if it's the Nilfgaard player playing the 6 for 13 or if it's the Skellige player putting 4 turns of rain on the board and just using Bride of the Sea to bring back Sigdrifa's Right to bring back Melusine. I don't really care. So, if anything, I think this card is going to be overpriced. I want it to be good. I don't want it to be too good, but I want it to be good. But I think there's a chance it might not be. We'll see. Anyway, I spent 10 minutes talking about one card, so we're gonna have to go through this a little bit faster. Imperial Practitioner, a 5/5 human mage with Assimilate. Sounds familiar? Order, spawn a base copy of the last card that went to your opponent's graveyard on top of your deck. There's a lot of combo-y stuff going on with this expansion. Obviously, you can set up this guy. You can set up multiple copies of this guy. They all survive. You Vilgefortz your Artaud Terra Nova into your opponent's graveyard. Sounds bad, but then you can activate like 3 of this guy, and you get 3 Artauds on top of your deck. If you're able to draw into all of them, then it might actually be worth it. You know, this... I think its stats are decent. 5/5 with Assimilate. I mean, Assimilate is good now. Like, triggering Assimilate a few times is easy. It's worth it even without engines. With engines, it just becomes better. And a lot of people are saying this card is going to be absolutely insane because it can spawn gold cards on top of your deck. True. But it doesn't do anything else on the board. And that's very important. Like, it's not a low tempo card. Vilgefortz is a low tempo card. This, not really. 5/5 with Assimilate. It's decent tempo for its cost. But the effect... The effect can be really good. It can be bad. It can mean nothing. It can go either way. It can really go either way. Obviously, you stick this on the board for a turn, and then you... I don't know. Somehow kill one of your opponent's 12 provision legendary cards that you're able to actually use for decent value on your own. Spawn a base copy of it on top of your deck. Joachim into it. Fur card to draw into it. But then, like, really, like, some of the points go to this guy, some of the points go to the card that lets you even play the card you spawned. Some points are just attributed to the fact that it's a relatively inconsistent effect. So it's okay for it to high roll a little bit. Like, I don't think this card is insane at all, but I think it's perfectly fine. But, you know, like, Assimilate doesn't really kill stuff a lot. That's also a thing. If you want to use this for, like, good value, you usually have to put some removal into your Assimilate deck. Now, I saw the person who revealed this did let people know that, you know, at the end of the round when all the units go to the graveyard, it's the one on the ranged row to the far right that enters last. Which makes sense, because, you know, that's the way sequencing works. It starts melee to ranged, left to right. So the rightmost unit on the ranged row will be the last card that went to your opponent's graveyard. You know, if nothing else enters before you activate this card. So maybe you can set it up in that way. But I don't think this card is too spectacular, but I think it has good enough stats and a funny enough effect that it will see some play. But I don't think it'll be nearly as toxic as some people think, and I think it's just cool. I like it. Illusionist. Human mage soldier. A random soldier tag, but it's kind of relevant. 3/4. Deploy. Spawn a base copy of a bronze unit from your opponent's graveyard on the right of this card and set its power to 1. Bonded. don't set its power to 1. There are things you can do with this. Obviously, the bonded effect is pretty good. Like, if you get the bonded effect from this guy, there's like no way he's bad. Because you just need a 4 base power unit. And this plays for 7. That's all you need. You can set this up like if you get a greatsword, you know, amazing for you. Or like a griffin. But you can even set it up yourself. You can use Vilgefortz to put a Nilfgaardian Knight or an Archfane Tortoise in the opponent's graveyard. Those are fairly cheap cards that you don't mind swapping for something really good. And then you have a big base power unit, and a bonded Illusionist can play for like 10 to 11 points, which is really good. You know, the problem with this guy is the first one you play, and any subsequent ones you play that don't have the bonded effect, I mean, how often will you get something good? I mean, an Andrega Lara would be pretty decent because it would thrive immediately and has 2 armor, so it's well protected. What else? I don't know. I really don't know. There are definitely going to be things that are fine to get at 1 strength. And one synergy this does have is if you get something, set its power to 1, and it is of no further use to you, you know, you have a 1 strength target for slave infantry, so you can play that for 9, which is pretty good. Overall, you did not get a lot of points in doing that. What else can you get? I mean, there are so many things. If you do get a Nilfgaardian Knight, set its power to 1, you know, you can play a reset on it. You can play Ointment. You know, boost the unit by 4. If it's a soldier, heal it first. You can play an 11-point Ointment. For a total of 15 points for 8 provisions. Pretty good. Pretty good. Play this in Imperial formation between 2 soldiers. Well, actually, the unit you spawn from this, if that's a soldier, and you put this to the right of another soldier, it gets 2 armor. The opponent has to commit a lot of wasted resources into killing it if they want to do that. So most likely, you'll get the bonded. And suddenly you play a really good card. So it's a really interesting card. I do hope that it becomes playable in a way that is, you know, not too memey and also not too abusive. I don't think you can abuse this. Like, you're spawning a copy. Like, you're not stealing from the graveyard. You're just spawning a copy. The unbonded versions of this will often be weak. I don't think you can abuse this. Let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if there is a way to abuse this. But for right now, I think it's just a fun card that honestly may not be too viable. Or maybe it will be. Who knows? It really depends. Like, if there's a good amount of cards that you can get at 1 strength that are still good. We'll see. Alright, the last one. This one, I saw a surprising amount of people call overpowered. And out of the ones that we've seen here, this one has the most clear-cut power potential. Lydia von Bredevort. A 5/9 human mage. Deploy melee, create and play a bronze special card from your opponent's faction. Deploy ranged, play a bronze special card from your opponent's graveyard. So the melee effect has RNG to it. Like, it's not just from your opponent's starting deck, it's from their faction. And I think all factions have some bad options. At least some very subpar options that you don't want to get with this. But it's a nice backup effect. And, you know, you do get the assimilate trigger. But the range draw ability it's the interesting one. Play a bronze special card from your opponent's graveyard. Obvious power play here. You're playing against Orbs of Insight. This doesn't copy them. This does actually take them. The opponent plays an Orb of Insight, and you take it. Nilfgaard usually has access to a decent amount of special cards that they can play, so you should be able to get the replayed Orb of Insight as well. And you're denying them a lot of points. You're getting a good amount of points. It's all good. Check my phone real quick. What else? You could always set it up. Like, if you just use Vilgefortz to put an Imperial Diplomacy in their graveyard. Like, if you're playing against Syndicate, right? And so many of their special cards are going to be trash for you. You can do that. You can definitely do that. And yeah, the melee ability is kind of the fallback ability, because you can never be sure what you get. But you know, there are a lot of factions where I think the melee effect is pretty safe. But I mean, it remains to be seen. So people are calling this really overpowered because it's like it's a Triss telekinesis with 1 more strength, 2 less provisions, doesn't break devotion. I think, I mean, in many ways, yes, this is better than Triss. Like, it's more base power, 2 less provisions is actually very relevant. And yeah, it doesn't break devotion. Nilfgaard recently has preferred to play devotion because Amnesty is a really good one-off these days. I mean, you gotta think, like, Triss Telekinesis. It's not really the best card. It's good in Assimilate. It's good in Assimilate. But that's mainly because of how reliably it can trigger Assimilate like 2 to 3 times. This can't really do that. I mean, if you set up its ranged effect with Vilgefortz to get like a diplomacy or a remedy. But actually, that'll be from your starting deck, so like it won't even trigger Assimilate that extra time. You'll get 1, maybe 2 triggers. And you know, in Assimilate heavy decks, just consistently having that extra trigger from Triss, I think makes it worth being an overall weaker card, stat-wise. But this card is really good. Like, it is really good. You can mess with Scoia'tael. And that's pretty much it. Right? Like, no other factions really do that interesting things with their special cards. Their bronze special cards. NR? No. No. Yeah, this messes with Scoia'tael more than anything. And not even in that big of a way. So it's... I don't think this is overpowered. But I think it's a very good card. I do look forward to playing this. This is definitely a card that I would play in an Assimilate style list. But I really don't think this is going to be nearly as insane as a lot of people are making it out to be. I think it's just good. It's a good, solid card. So, Nilfgaard as a whole. I will not be going over the same tirade or ramble that I did last time about how, you know, some factions, they've been doing the 3-part expansions correctly, some factions they haven't. You know, with Nilfgaard, I feel like they have been doing it correctly because this is very self-contained. Like, here we get a new set of Nilfgaard cards that all interact with the opponent's graveyard. That has nothing to do with the previous Price of Power expansions. It barely even plays into existing cards. Like, we have Experimental Remedy. And we have, like, the location that takes from the graveyard. But there's not a lot of graveyard interaction. But I don't mind them having it. I really don't. And it's like with the way they are statted, the way they are worded, like the bronzes just copy. Like, they don't steal stuff, they just copy it. And Lydia can steal stuff, but only bronze specials. Which, you know, there's a very clear-cut limitation to how disruptive that can be. And then you have Vilgefortz, which I honestly think may be understated. Again, I could be very wrong. I could be missing something very obvious. Maybe he is insanely OP. But I think his stats may be holding him back from being broken. I don't know. But feel free to let me know down below what you think of the new Nilfgaard cards. I definitely prefer this approach to Nilfgaard. Like, we've seen some not fun approaches to Nilfgaard in the past. And I think this one keeps some elements of it, but in a very tame way. And overall, I don't think it's too bad. I like these cards. I like the theme they're going for. I think we have a decent set of options here within the theme of interacting with the opponent's graveyard. I think Vilgefortz may be underpowered, unless I'm missing something. You know, I think maybe he's underpowered, but he is not Reen's levels of underpowered. Reen's is just, you know, too all over the place. But I definitely like it. Nilfgaard getting some really good art once again. I've seen people have issues with the art here as well. I think just people are having issues with art these days. I like the Nilfgaard art here. They've had overall good art for the whole Price of Power expansion. I am looking forward to playing most of these cards. Practitioner just seems like a card I probably won't bother with to begin with. But it is interesting. And I'll probably give it a try at some point. The other ones, though, I definitely want to try soon. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on the new Nilfgaard cards. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. And I'll hope to see you again soon when I talk about the Syndicate cards. Which, honestly, I couldn't give less of a shit about. I'm just waiting for Skellige cards. And they're next, after Syndicate. Please God be good. They always are. Skellige is such a cool faction. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll see you soon. Have a good one.